I'm Heath Lambert, and you're listening to Marked by Grace, a podcast applying the grace of Jesus to all of life. Welcome to the January 29th episode of Marked by Grace. The question that I am answering from you this week is, can Christians use TikTok? This is a question sent in by one of you. Those are my favorite questions to answer. If you have a question you would like me to try and get at, you can send it to markedbygrace@fbcjax.com. That's markedbygrace@fbcjax.com. And this week it's, can Christians use TikTok? Now, this is an interesting reality for me because I don't claim to know everything there is to know about TikTok. I know that TikTok is a hugely controversial issue for all sorts of reasons, not only having to do with the thing the questioner has in mind here, but also there's charges about its connections with China and China tracking us. And listen, I'm not claiming to know about those things or weigh in on those things. And if you want to get upset with me and say, hey, I've overlooked something, like that's just beyond the subject of what I'm trying to talk about today. The question that I've been asked by one of you is a moral question. It's an ethical question. And the question is, can Christians use TikTok? Now, some people think the answer to the question is easy. Maybe you're listening to this and wondering why I'm taking time to answer such an easy question. Maybe you say, of course, Christians can use TikTok. It's fun. I love it. I learn things. I laugh at things. It's a great way to kill a little bit of time. I love TikTok. Of course, Christians can use it. On the other hand, you might be listening to this and think it's obvious for opposite reasons. You might say, of course not. TikTok is dangerous. There's vile things on there. It's a horrible time waster. I can't believe anybody would even think that we should use TikTok. Well, I am talking about this week on the podcast because I actually agree with the questioner that things are a little bit more complicated than an easy yes or an easy no. That means it's not my intention to say, can Christians use TikTok? Well, the clear, obvious answer is yes. Or can Christians use TikTok? The clear, obvious answer is no. And I want to answer the question, but I want to explain why I'm answering it in a little bit more complicated way and seeing the question in a little bit more of a complicated way. So the first thing we all need to know is that this side of heaven, most things are a mixture of blessing and curses. That's just the way it is in a fallen world. In James chapter 3, verses 9 to 10, it says, with it, talking about the tongue, with it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. Now, it goes on to say, my brothers, such things ought not to be so, but that's the way it is. Now, in a fallen world, all of us have to deal every day, all day long, with an unfortunate distinction between what ought to be and what is. If there were no sin in the world, we could only ever live in the world as it ought to be. But as soon as sin enters the world, and as soon as we live in that sin, then there's this fracture created. There is this separation between the way things are and the way things ought to be. As that relates to your mouth, it ought to be the case that you only use it for blessing and never for cursing. But in the sinful world as it is, you take this wonderful gift of God, your mouth, your tongue, and you use it for blessing and you use it for cursing. That's not the way it ought to be, but in a sinful world, that's the way it is. That's the case with all sorts of things this side of heaven. Everything you consume and everything I consume has a mixture of good and bad, blessing and cursing, negative and positive. It's true with cable news. If you still watch cable news, you can find good things that are wonderful and glorious on cable news, and you can find bad things. It's true with your favorite streaming service. There's good things you can watch on your streaming service and bad things you can watch on your streaming service. Ask the question, should Christians use the internet? Well, you can't say, yes, Christians should use the internet, or no, Christians should use the internet. You have to say, well, what are you using it for? Because there's bad things on the internet and there's good things on the internet. Same thing with books. There's wonderful books out there and there's bad books out there. So the reality is this distinction between what is and what ought to be, as James makes reference to, means we need to ask a different question about TikTok. It's not whether we should use TikTok or whether we should not use TikTok. It means the most important thing is not what we're using, but what are we wanting when we use it? The most important issue in answering this question has to do with our intentions. When we go to a place like TikTok, what do we want? One of the things that I learned from my daughter, who is 15 years old, going on 16, and is a full-blown member of Generation Z, who has a lot more information about TikTok than I do. One of the things I heard her talking about with her friends is what side of TikTok you're on. So you can look at someone's TikTok stream or their TikTok thread or feed or whatever, and you can tell what side they're on. So you can flip through the videos and you can see a lot of pictures of puppies and kittens and babies laughing. You can flip through the videos and find a lot of videos of people falling and slipping and dropping things. You can also flip through and find jokes. You can flip through and find things much more sinister than that. What does the side of TikTok that you occupy, what does that say about you? If I were to open up your TikTok and look at the videos that this algorithm is recommending for you, what would it tell me about you? It'll tell me something. What will it tell me about you? If you want to go to TikTok to see bad things, you're going to find it. If you want to go to TikTok to find short synopses of history, you're going to find it. If you want to go to TikTok to find funny jokes, you're going to find it. What does your TikTok tell about you? So honestly, the question isn't, should I use TikTok or not? The question is, what are you using TikTok for? What are you going out in search of? Listen, you should probably avoid TikTok if there's material on it that tempts you. You can find material on there that will feed your lust, and you should avoid TikTok if you've got a problem there. You can find TikTok that will feed your sinful, unrighteous anger. You can find that on TikTok, and you should avoid it if that's a temptation for you. You can find material on TikTok that will inspire envy and discontentment in you. It'll make you not like your life, and it'll make you jealous of that person and their life with their house and their clothes and their shoes and their cars. You should probably avoid TikTok if that's a problem for you. You also should probably avoid TikTok if you are tempted to waste too much time. Now, listen, I want to be careful here. I don't want to sound overly righteous here. All of us have time wasters. All of us have time wasters. Nobody is 100%, 10 out of 10 productive every day, all day long, only doing fully, faithfully effective things. Everybody pauses and chews gum with their brain for a little bit. You watch a show, or you read a book that is just for fun, or you're looking at something on YouTube, or you watch a movie, or you read the funny papers if you're real old school. I mean, everybody has something that they do to take a break. I'm not talking about recreation. I'm not talking about taking a breather. But if you're tempted to just waste your time, if you are not being productive, if wasting time is chronic and inhibiting your faithfulness, then you probably ought to not look at TikTok. Those are some guidelines, but the reality is, can Christians use TikTok? Well, yeah, sure. It depends on who you are. And no, absolutely not. It depends on what you want. And I hope that that is helpful for you this week.